Very good. Okay, so without any further ado, I'll get going because I know some folks will have things that they want to tend to today. This will be the equipment planning and preparation section that, what the heck? Oh, there we go. I had a random cursor flying around on my screen. So this will be the outline of the session. First, I'm going to start off with just a basic introduction to the concerns that revolve around planning and preparation. Again, a lot of the things I think about when it comes to drone missions are in three stages. There's the planning and preparation, there's the execution in the field, and then there's the making something useful and deliverable with it afterwards. And so this will be based on the first segment of that kind of perspective. And what are some of those concerns? Then I'm going to go over I'll give you equipment orientation video, because I think at this point a lot of people might be getting PowerPoint saturation, and so having something just a little different might be nice. I have this video that I put together up at my dad's ranch that goes over some of the equipment that will be, or some of the equipment planning and preparation things. And it's actually out in the area where the data sets for this drone camp were collected at. Maybe it's a little bit of fun, but it's also not the best high quality, like professional grade recording. It came off of my phone. So it's good though. Then I'm going to go into some basic stuff about what you need to do before you get started. Some of this Brandon already talked about with FAA registrations, checking your airspace, creating an emergency plan or having a plan for emergencies, and then mission plan coordination. And then I want to jump into the equipment. This I expect to take ballpark of about a half an hour to cover these things. And then I want to open it up for Q&A. At the end of the day, I want to have everyone have the opportunity to send their questions through someone that's monitoring the chat window. Good. So to the concerns, I say the number one thing is, are you going to crash and cause either damages or maybe even a risk to someone's health or life? So you got to take that safety first idea in the hand. And so the concerns are, could something really bad go down? Could your drone go down and crash into a hillside and have your lithium-ion batteries explode and burn down the field or the buildings in the area, like they almost had happen down in Berkeley with the drone races a couple years ago? So you gotta keep the concerns there in mind. There's also liability concerns. If you're flying in an area and any of those things do go wrong, you're liable for those damages in a lot of cases. Having insurance might be a good idea if there's any concerns there. The other concerns when it comes to your planning and preparation is your equipment. Is it going to work? And what can go wrong? So yeah, keep all these things in mind as you watch the videos. I'm going to go straight to that so we leave plenty of time for questions and answers.
It is really easy to underestimate how much time planning and preparation can take before your drone mission. As you get more experience at flying your drone, you might find out for every 20 minutes to an hour of time you spend with your drone in the air, you could spend 3 or 4 or 5 hours getting your gear ready, planning your mission, checking weather reports, not to mention loading up your vehicle and then unloading when you get out to the field. So in this session, I'm going to cover some of the considerations that you might want to think about before you go out and start flying your drone. To start with, I'm going to talk about some of the peripheral accessories and the actual drone equipment gear that you have to get ready. When you go out, are you going to need to have ground control targets? If you don't have those and you need them, that's going to take some time to get ready. I created these wood, black and white ground control targets myself, but they're also available online too. Charging your batteries is not a trivial thing. That can take a lot of time. Especially if you're going to do one mission after another mission after another mission when you get out in the field. And then you'll have to charge more batteries and charge your tablet, or tablets plural, if there's a chance that either you're going to run low on battery, but also if you're out in a hot environment, the tablet oftentimes overheats, and you're going to have a backup for that. Also, have cables now, backup cables for that matter. Charge your controller. If you need a GPS for your ground control target, make sure you charge that before you go in the field. Here's a biggie that not everybody thinks of, and I've been guilty of this myself before, where I'm in a little bit of a rush and I just want to get out there and fly my mission, and I don't check my drone for firmware updates. And then you get out there and you find out, uh-oh, there's a firmware update that's going to stop me from flying, and that can be a major problem. Sometimes it helps if you have a hotspot, or you can hotspot through your cell phone to be able to download that and install it, but it is a lot easier to do that in your home or at your office before you go out into the field. The way you do a firmware update on many drones, if not almost all, is you will go to the website where for whatever proprietary drone software that you're going to be using, download it, put it on your SD or micro SD card, put it in the camera of the drone, and turn it on. And it'll automatically update through the camera and get everything ready. You can usually find directions for this readily online for each different drone. Another key consideration too is to check for weather. We are at the mercy of the weather when it comes to drones, and it makes it very difficult sometimes in some environments to be able to plan and execute your missions as you wish. So look at the weather closely and plan accordingly. Not just rain, but also wind. Wind can get you, and also temperature can really inhibit your missions if that's depending again on the environment. Lastly, also if you're flying at high altitudes, that can be an issue too. Remember that a wind at high altitude is going to be more significant when it comes to your drone than at lower altitudes. So check your weather. Depending on your institution, you might want to file a flight plan. In the case of the University of California, we have a flight reporting system that we go through, which ensures that there's no temporary flight restrictions in the given areas that we want to fly. And also it helps to identify and weed out risks that are unnecessary when it comes to drone operations. Not typically as common as a firmware update on the actual drone. Sometimes you want to check for firmware updates on your cameras. Usually they won't stop operating completely like a drone will, but you can get better results if there's some new firmware that improves the quality of your captures. Check your equipment, not once, twice actually. Once when you're at home or in the office, and then once when you get out into the field. In the case of this Matrice 100, just today I noticed that this tower is loose. The last thing you want is to have your tower falling off into one of your propellers while you're in midair and causing a catastrophic crash. So check this before and after you go in the field. In this case, you might want to just have something like a little bit of duct tape or hot glue or electrical tape where you can just tape it down so it's not going to go anywhere, and then fix it more permanently when you get back home or to the office. But have a plan B for a lot of these things. I often say that drones are like Murphy's Law incarnate. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. But you need to just plan for that and hope that it doesn't go wrong. It's because eventually it will. Check your cameras. Make sure that they don't have, if you don't want to have a filter on them, they don't have a filter. It's really easy to be in the field and forget to take a cap off or a filter off. So you want to check that before you go out in the field and also once you get there. Make sure you don't launch with your cap on. A lot of us have done that before. Get some compressed air to spray out your drone. Helps keep it clean. It also is useful for cleaning off the lenses of your drone. You don't want to be rubbing dirt or dust around on the lenses if you could possibly help it. This will help get it partially clean before you use like a clean wipe to clean that sort of thing up. Other things to consider. When you go on the field, now that was talking about before, mostly about what you do before you go out in the field. Then when you do go out to the field, there's other considerations you want to think about. One, is there going to be a fire risk? So think safety first if possible. If there's a fire risk, in this terrain right now, there's no fire risk. Everything is green and it's unlikely that a fire could get out of control, but fires have happened. That's one of the #1 ways that hobby air parks get shut down is because of fire risk, because of the drones crashing, and then they're liable for the potential damages or potential damages in the future. Also, make sure that all of your software on your computers are all set up, and again, everything is charged when you're going out to the field. And when you get there, you might want to have an inverter, just in case. Like I said, always have a plan B, just in case your battery runs down faster than you expect. Maybe you're distracted setting up your gear and you have your screen on full brightness. You can easily run out of juice on your computer or on one of your other, on your batteries or your tablet, you name it. Another alternative sometimes is a power block. This is handy. I've used this a number of times. Also, check your SD cards. Format them to the appropriate either FAT32, exFAT, whatever formatting, but make sure that they're blank before you get out there. You don't want to have mixed matched data sets all on one card. You might run out of space is one thing, or sometimes they just aren't compatible with the given camera that you're putting them into. Have an SD or a micro SD card reader so you can easily check your data in the field on your computer. That means looking at your imagery, make sure that it came out clear. You might throw it into your image stitching software just to do a quick run to make sure that all the pictures were taken where they're supposed to be taken, because sometimes you get dropouts. Easy to underestimate, have some sunscreen. Not just sunscreen, but also a bottle of water. When you get mission focused, it is really easy to forget about this. I know it seems silly, but many a person has been burnt pretty good while they're out there flying their drone for hours and not thinking about that because they're focused on what they're doing. So have these things and drink lots of water, use lots of sunscreen. Have tools with you. This is a multi-tool with some various accessories. Also have maybe an Allen wrench, because in this case of this Patrice 100, there's a number of Allen wrench screws that you need to make sure that they're tight. Check things, like I said, not just at home, but also in the field as soon as you get there. Other things to consider: make sure if you need one that you have a white target for your radiometric calibration for a multispectral sensor, if that's what you're using. Have that ready, have it clean if possible, and sometimes those targets you need to you might want to get them retested every so often to make sure that their reflectance values are holding true, or in general they tend to go down over time. I mentioned before, have plenty of wires. This will haunt you. If there's one thing that'll fail you when you get out in the field, it seems to be a wire. It's the littlest thing, but that can ruin your day. So make sure that you have those in hand. I have a hat on right now. Having a hat is really handy. Also having sunglasses. But sometimes when you're looking at your tablet, you can't see the flight information so well with your sunglasses on. So you can go ahead and take them off and and shade your eyes with your hat. You can also use your hat and the top of your frame of your controller as a sight plane to make sure that you keep an eye on the drone while you're looking at the tablet at the same time when you're in the field. I know that's barely planning and preparation, but just being ready is part of planning and preparation. Planning for the worst. One of the things you can do is if you have that sight plane and something does go wrong, and I've seen this happen, where you're out there and all of a sudden the drone just goes and goes down, you can use that sight to figure out where it's at and then lock on to some point in the horizon that direction so you can walk out and hopefully recover your drone. The last time that happened to me, I was able to go recover it, fix the camera mount after a couple $100 or so, and it was good to go again. So there's so just plan for the possibility of things like that can happen. Besides that, having a fire extinguisher is handy, but maybe better in a lot of cases is actually having a water sprayer, because spraying grass with a fire extinguisher is not very effective from what I've been told. But having a water sprayer is more effective. Spray in front of the fire line, try to suppress it in the event that that does happen, and it has happened in some cases before. When it comes to fixed wing drones, make sure that you have that the rubber banding around your propeller is good and that you have extras of these, because that can be a problem. Also, spray out your Pittock tube. That can be a problem, is if there's a little dirt in there, and also the ground detection sensor. You might want to spray that off sometimes too, because when it gets clogged or gets muddied up or dirtied up, then it won't detect the ground very effectively, and that'll cause problems with your mission. Besides that, I might suggest having a list. These are the very basic things that you might want to consider before you go out. I'll talk about more steps during other sections of this section. Thank you very much. Yes.
All right, very good. So again, I'm working with 2 different computers. Hopefully that was useful to you. There's some additional things that could be covered there as well. That was an abbreviated list or variety of things that you might want to consider. There's other great things like having a hood for your tablet, which can be a lifesaver. Again, that's a failure point with having the heat will affect many tablets in a big way if you're out in the field. There's a variety of other things that are maybe a little bit more specific to certain types of equipment that I don't have here for show and tell, and a lot of that can be found by searching online through YouTube for a variety of different options that you for different configurations and equipment preparation steps. So you'll have to do your own due diligence depending on the configuration of your platform, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen on the other computer again. This time, I want to show you a variety of website resources. This would be an example of Pix4D's webpage here, where you have a firmware download option. It's pretty easy to find. You just Google Pix4D firmware downloads. This is similar for other platforms. And then if you scroll down, the way it works is you download the firmware. This takes just a few seconds. You could go to show it in your folder. I already downloaded it once earlier. You might cut that and put it in another folder. You need to unzip that file. And then you would take this bin file, put it on a clean formatted card, plug it into the camera of your drone, turn the drone on. Sometimes it'll take 5 minutes, sometimes it'll take 15 minutes, but you let it just run for a while. Then when you're done, you turn off the drone, take the card out, put it in your computer, and there'll be a text file that comes out that says this was complete. This process has been the same for Mica Sense, Red Edge, Parrot Sequoias, and a number of other platforms that we've that we use as well. So just know that you need to check your firmware. I've showed up in the field before and not had the firmware, and the DJI in the case that I'm referring to had my drone shut down, so you couldn't launch it until you uploaded. And unfortunately, I was outside of cell range. So, and I'd only flown it a few days before, but it'll stop you dead in your tracks if you don't have a firmware update. So check your firmware on your platforms before you go out. The other thing Brandon mentioned, you got to make sure that you register your drones to be in legal compliance with the FAA. The only site to use is the FAA drone page. And it's really easy now. You just go to this page, start your registration, put in all of your information, and then click submit, and it'll run you through a pay option where you have to put in your credit card to pay $5 per drone. In a lot of cases, you'll want to go to some kind of flight planning resource. I just want to plug Brandon Stark's UC Merced page with all the links for different resources that are on here. There's actually a lot more resources than you might expect. There's a variety of different flight planning apps that you can use. There's Kitty Hawk, there's Skyward, AirMap. AirMap is what is actually embedded within our UC flight safety reporting system. Inside of the system, before I'd ever go do a flight, I go here, I would create a mission. Again, this is within the UC system. I know most of you aren't, but the principle of what I'm going to show you kind of stays. This would be a air map representation of the area. What I see here is different controlled airspaces. This is Merced down here with around Atwater and the controlled airspace. In the case of Davis, not in controlled airspace. It's important to check this before you go and conduct your missions, and not just months ahead of time, because once in a while there'll be a temporary flight restriction for any number of reasons. Usually, in my experience, it's been because of fires in areas, but there could be natural disasters or political movements. There's or considerations. So you want to make sure that you check this before you conduct a mission. If I click on the map, it would give me information if that area was controlled. Sometimes you can use this information to request a long waiver for being able to fly in certain lower level controlled airspaces. Check the weather. I mentioned that on the video, but it bears repeating. Do it ahead of time. It's really hard to plan missions when you're on a tight schedule, so you'll need to look ahead, days ahead, and then expect the weather to change, especially if you're doing something like a thermal flight where scattered clouds can ruin your day. You might as well not even go out if you got scattered clouds. But then again, the weather reports aren't always right. Look at a variety of resources, and not just for the temperature and the precipitation, but also wind. You can plan your missions according to the wind angle in some cases, and then the speed. I'm pretty conservative about my willingness to go out in the field and fly when speeds are over, say, like 12 miles per hour. If I'm flying with an Inspire 1, maybe I'd bump that up to 20 miles per hour. But just know at your launch point, that could be 5-10 miles per hour and be 30 or 40 miles per hour in the air. And that's both the safety risk as well as going to really interfere with the way how you planned your mission and if it's going to work out the way you hoped it would. So once you have all of this weather information and everything is all set up, you've determined your airspace is all fine. There's a bunch of other logistics that I could mention and considerations for planning that don't really come up in people's minds all that often. Oop, I can stop sharing this. Switch to my other computer. And so, wait a minute, let's see. Everybody see me fine there? I have
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. I don't see what you see. So there's other things to consider before you go out too, is security. We've had this happen where one of our colleagues that you'll cross paths with in the PICS or in the ArcGIS sessions, Robert Johnson was driving home from DroneCamp and pulled into a gas station, and someone smashed his window out and stole a computer. And that sort of thing can happen, especially if you have a bunch of really expensive drone equipment. Keep it locked up in a way that's safe. I have a huge steel lock bed on my truck that you'd have to have a torch pretty much to get into, but keep it safe. Also, keep your batteries out of the heat. These are all kind of planning components, and I'll tell you what, from what I gather, a burning lithium polymer or lithium ion battery is really hard to put out, and that can be a problem. So you just keep your equipment safe. Not only, even if it doesn't explode or it doesn't go up in flames, having your batteries get too hot will drastically reduce the life of them. So keep your batteries and your equipment in safe, good conditions. Other little considerations that you might not think about is the smallest things, like lots of extra, like propellers. Having a backup drone if you have a very large project, it's like 1 is none, 2 is 1, kind of like an old military adage. Have extra redundant equipment on hand. One of the failure points on a lot of drones is the gimbal. Be careful when you're putting your camera on your drone. Be very careful, because that is one of the weaker points. And even if it doesn't appear broken, we've had gimbals that got just bumped around a little bit too much, and it created a short, and then 1 second it was in the air, and the next thing you know, it's the drone is the battery's just plummeting. So you look out for those sorts of things. I know this is a little bit close to the mission launch that would be kind of like stage 2 after the planning and preparation, but keep in mind to go through routines and have checklists. I mentioned that in the video, but also just make sure that you have checklists. One of the things that I check for all the time is making sure that my propellers are locked on tight, because they can go on in some cases they can go on and they feel kind of tight, but they're just a little bit loose. And next thing you know, you're in the air and your propeller comes off. I think Brandon can tell you stories about that. He's had a lot of different things. Brandon Stark, that is, had a lot of different occurrences of this sort happen. And so just check to make sure that they're tight on there. Another consideration in terms of equipment is what I'm focusing on largely right here is are your batteries good? We just ordered some new batteries, and I noticed that one of them came and there was something wrong with it. When I tried to load it up, it seemed like it took a charge, but it didn't. Make sure that you check your equipment frequently, including your batteries if they work correctly. Now kind of moving on to like safety what if kind of stuff. Having a safety vest might not be a bad idea. If you're somewhere where there's cars passing by, it's just something to consider. I mentioned having water and fire extinguishers. We bring these out on missions. If a battery is burning, you might just want to douse the area around it, because the battery itself you can't put that out, but at least you can impede the direction of the fire travel. Having a bunch of contingency plans, having spare tablets is a good idea. And there's a bunch of electronical elements that you want to consider. Having a hotspot, and this is something I didn't mention in the video, but having a hard drive. If you're on a multi-day mission, it's amazing how much data you can accumulate. I mean, we're talking terabytes sometimes, depending on the types of sensors you're using. And your laptop just won't be able to take it all. So if you have a good solid state hard drive that you can put your data on, have that. And have a plan to back up your stuff as much as possible. So if say, you drop this out the window while you're driving or something, that you still have some kind of backup possible. Other considerations. When you're in the field with your GPS and you're putting out ground control targets, having your GPS like in the right coordinate system is a good idea. That I've seen that throw off a project or two over time. You can be corrected if you have the know-how, but it makes your life less pleasant, that's for sure. Having a repair kit is a good idea for those what if things happen. Not mentioned in the video, but having an aviation radio is sometimes important if you're in an area where there's an airport nearby and you need to have this for incoming or departing flights. There are cases where there are non-restricted airspaces where planes do fly at a fairly low level. Just know though that crop dusters don't usually don't get on the radio off then, and so they're kind of an exception to that idea. Having your white target recalibrated once in a while is a good idea. This target is seen, this is one of our more used targets, and it's showing its age in a pretty good way. It's probably about time that I bring it into a lab and have the spectral values rechecked on it. So the reflectance values of the imagery actually are somewhere close to what they should be. Beyond that, I think I'm gonna step back. I want to make sure that we have enough time for questions and answers.